I never thought silence could feel like public execution. My sister didn't yell. She smiled. In front of our entire family, she said one word that erased me. Useless. People laughed. Glasses clinked. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak but because I was hiding something. Then a stranger stood up. He wasn't family. He wasn't invited to speak. He said he was a lawyer. And before anyone could stop him, he asked my sister one question. That question froze the room. Because if she answered honestly, everything she built would collapse. What was that question, and why did my father suddenly go pale? If you've ever been underestimated, subscribe now. You'll want what comes next. The dinner was in Naperville, Illinois. My parents' house. The kind of place where everything looks perfect from the outside and rots quietly on the inside. Long table. Crystal glasses that cost more than my rent. Forced celebration energy thick enough to choke on. My sister Maribel controlled that room like she always did. Confident. Admired. Praised by everyone who never bothered to look past the surface. I stood near the wall. Present but ignored. That was my place in this family. That had always been my place. A cousin I barely knew turned to me with polite curiosity and asked what I did for a living. I opened my mouth to answer. Maribel interrupted before a single word could form. She laughed. That light, dismissive laugh she'd perfected over the years. The one that made cruelty sound like casual observation. She told them I'd been trying different things. She said it with air quotes. She reframed my entire life as a series of failures, as aimless wandering, as proof that some people just don't have what it takes. Then she delivered the word. Useless. She said it smiling. Like it was a joke we were all in on. Like I should laugh too. The room went quiet for half a second. Then someone chuckled. Then someone else. Laughter spread like infection across that table, uneven and uncomfortable but undeniable. Nobody stopped it. My mother looked down at her plate. My father reached for his wine glass. Their silence was approval. Their comfort was more important than my dignity. I felt every eye in that room. Some pitying. Some amused. Some relieved it wasn't them. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I didn't make a scene. I excused myself quietly and walked to the bathroom. Locked the door. Put my hands on the sink. Knuckles white. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt something harden inside my chest. Not sadness. Not even anger yet. A decision. I thought about my grandmother Inez. The only person in my family who ever saw me clearly. She used to say, "Power doesn't announce itself. It waits." I realized, standing there in that bathroom with my family's laughter still echoing in my skull, that I'd been waiting my entire life. What exactly was I waiting for? Would you have spoken up, or stayed silent? Comment what you'd do. I left town 2 weeks later. No goodbye posts. No announcements. No tearful explanations to people who never asked questions that mattered. I just left. I rented a small apartment in a part of Chicago where nobody knew my name or cared about my family's reputation. I worked nights at a legal documentation service. The pay was terrible. The hours were brutal. Nobody noticed me, and that was exactly what I needed. During the day, I studied estate law, asset tracing, financial recovery, the architecture of family wealth, and how it moves between generations. I learned how trusts work, how they're protected, how they're contested. I learned what happens when someone takes what doesn't belong to them and builds a life on top of theft. I sent out applications to small firms. Most never responded. The ones that did rejected me with form letters that didn't even bother to spell my name correctly. But a few said yes. My early cases paid almost nothing. I worked pro bono more than I worked for money. But every case taught me something. Every client who listened instead of dismissing me was proof that the plan wasn't foolish. I recovered my first contested estate asset 8 months in. It was small. A property dispute tied to a will that had been manipulated after the testator died. The family had given up. I didn't. When the check came through, when my client cried with relief in my tiny office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that needs an audience. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't ask permission. My work expanded. Chicago cases led to consulting work with firms tied to New York estates. My reputation grew through referrals, not headlines. People who needed someone discreet, someone thorough, someone who understood that family money is never clean. I avoided family events. Claimed I was busy. Claimed I was traveling. Claimed whatever would keep me away from that table, from those faces, from the casual cruelty they called love. My family assumed I'd failed and faded out. That I'd proven Maribel right. Let them think that. Staying invisible mattered because they needed to forget I existed. They needed to feel safe. They needed to believe I was still that quiet girl standing by the wall, too weak to fight back. Most people quit here. Subscribe if you don't. 3 years after I left Naperville, I wasn't that girl anymore. I specialized in estate recovery and financial misconduct. I worked alongside accountants, investigators, senior attorneys who respected my work because I earned that respect case by case. I lived comfortably, not extravagantly. I didn't need designer clothes or expensive cars or any of the shallow markers my family worshipped. I had something better. I had competence. I had control. I had no social media presence. I took no public credit for the cases I won. My name didn't appear in press releases or firm websites. I was a ghost in my own success story, and that was strategic. Because while I was building this quiet life, I was also collecting evidence. Old documents resurfaced. Bank records from accounts that should have been closed. Trust paperwork that didn't match the official story my family told. My grandmother Inez had set up a trust before she died. She'd been clear about her intentions. She wanted to take care of me. She knew what my family was. She knew they'd try to cut me out. She was right. After she died, my father had manipulated the paperwork. He'd transferred assets. He'd put Maribel's name on things she never earned, never deserved, never even knew existed. He thought he was clever. He thought nobody would check. He was wrong. I rebuilt that trust legally, quietly, piece by piece. And I waited. Why was my sister's name on assets she never earned? Because my father put it there. Because theft is easier when you call it family business. The pressure started slowly. My family began facing what they thought were random complications. Transfers that froze unexpectedly. Quiet audits from agencies they couldn't charm or bribe. Maribel benefited from assets she didn't fully understand. She lived in a condo she believed my parents had gifted her. She drove a car paid for by money she thought was inheritance. She had no idea where any of it actually came from. My father started to look nervous. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances who didn't realize they were feeding me intelligence. He was making calls, hiring accountants, asking questions he should have asked years ago. Then I made my move. I had a colleague, a lawyer named Calvin Rhodes, attend the next major family dinner as my guest. He was older, distinguished, the kind of man my father would want to impress. I told my family I was bringing someone. They assumed it was a date. They were so eager to see proof I'd finally found someone that they didn't ask questions. I attended that dinner calmly. Maribel was in rare form. Same confidence. Same smile. She made a joke about my little law thing, like I was playing dress-up instead of building a career. People laughed. Not as loud as before, but they laughed. Nobody expected interruption. She thought she was safe. Subscribe before the truth hits. Dessert was being served when Calvin stood up. He didn't ask permission. He simply rose from his seat, set down his napkin, and smiled politely at my father. I apologize for the interruption, he said. His voice was calm, professional, the kind of voice that makes people stop talking and pay attention. He introduced himself. Full name, firm affiliation, specialization in estate law and asset recovery. The room went quiet. Calvin turned to Maribel. I have a question, he said. It's regarding a trust established by Inez Hartwell in 2019. You're listed as a secondary beneficiary on several documents that were amended after her death. Can you tell me who authorized those amendments? Maribel froze. Her smile didn't fade immediately. It flickered, like a light bulb about to burn out. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. The trust in question held assets including property in Evanston and investment accounts totaling approximately $700,000. According to amended documents filed 6 months after Mrs. Hartwell's death, those assets were redirected. You've been receiving disbursements from those accounts for 3 years. I'm asking if you knew the amendments were unauthorized. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. This is a family dinner, he said. His voice shook. This is completely inappropriate. I finally spoke. Sit down, Dad. Everyone turned to look at me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calvin is here because I asked him to be, I said. I am the executor of Grandmother Inez's estate. The real estate. The one she intended. The one you tried to erase. My mother's face went pale. I've spent 3 years reconstructing what you dismantled, I continued. Every fraudulent amendment. Every forged signature. Every asset you transferred to Maribel thinking nobody would notice or care enough to fight back. Maribel opened her mouth. No sound came out. I have documentation, I said. I have testimony from the original estate attorney who was pressured into filing paperwork he knew was fraudulent. I have bank records. I have everything. The room was silent except for the sound of someone's breathing, too fast, too panicked. My father tried to speak. I didn't let him. You called me useless, I said, looking directly at Maribel. In front of everyone. You made them laugh. You made me feel like nothing. Her eyes filled with tears. I felt nothing. I wasn't useless, I said. I was quiet. And you mistook that for weakness. Calvin handed my father a folder. These are the legal documents initiating recovery proceedings, he said. You'll be hearing from multiple agencies. I suggest you hire representation. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I stood up, picked up my bag, looked at every face around that table. I'm not here for apologies, I said. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here so you understand exactly who I am. So you never make the mistake of underestimating me again. I walked out. Silence is dominance. My father called me 6 times that night. My mother sent texts that ranged from angry to pleading to confused. Maribel left a voicemail that was mostly crying. I didn't respond to any of them. 2 weeks later, my father tried to negotiate. He wanted to work something out. He wanted to keep this in the family. He suggested I was being vindictive, that I was hurting people who loved me, that Grandmother Inez wouldn't have wanted this. I met him at a neutral location. A coffee shop in downtown Chicago. Public. Recorded on my phone. Grandmother Inez wanted me taken care of, I said. She put it in writing. You erased it. You stole from her and from me. You gave it to Maribel because she was easier to control. Because she made you feel important. He tried to justify it. He said he'd been trying to protect the family assets. He said I'd been unstable, that I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. You didn't think I was unstable, I said. You thought I was weak. You thought I'd never fight back. He asked what I wanted. I told him the truth. I want what's legally mine. I want restitution. I want consequences. And I want you to understand that I don't owe you forgiveness just because we share DNA. He tried to argue. I stood up. The legal proceedings continue, I said. You'll hear from my attorneys. I walked away. I didn't look back. The consequences were not gentle. My father faced penalties for fraud and misrepresentation. Maribel had to return assets she'd treated as her own. The family reputation they'd protected so carefully crumbled in exactly the way they'd always feared. I didn't gloat. I didn't send updates to mutual friends. I didn't post about my victory on social media. I simply lived my life. I set permanent boundaries. No holiday dinners. No family events. No phone calls that started with guilt and ended with demands. I wasn't cruel. I was fair. And fairness, after years of being treated as less than, felt like justice. I wasn't useless. I was quiet. And they finally learned the difference. Was this justice or cruelty? Comment your verdict. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. If I wish I'd handled things differently. If I feel guilty for what happened to my family. I don't. Regret is what you feel when you hurt someone who didn't deserve it. My family deserved every consequence they faced. I think about that dinner a lot. The moment Maribel smiled and called me useless. The laughter that followed. The way my parents looked away. I think about how much anger I carried. How much pain I turned into fuel. But I also think about my grandmother Inez. She saw me when nobody else did. She believed I was capable when my own parents thought I was disposable. She taught me that power doesn't announce itself. It waits. I waited 3 years. I built a career. I learned the law. I collected evidence. I reconstructed an estate piece by piece while my family forgot I existed. And when the moment came, I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. If you're reading this and you've ever been underestimated, I want you to know something. Silence is not weakness. Patience is not passivity. And being dismissed is not the same as being defeated. The people who hurt you are counting on you staying hurt. They're counting on you believing what they say about you. They're counting on you giving up. Don't. Learn what they underestimate. Build what they can't see. Become who they never imagined you could be. And when the moment comes, and it will come, show them exactly who you are. Not with anger. Not with violence. With competence. With proof. With the quiet certainty that you were never the person they tried to make you believe you were. They laughed when they thought I was nothing. They stopped when they learned I wasn't. Stories like this aren't accidents. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.